Veronica here. One of the questions I've been noticing pop up in my inbox more often than not lately is how I would go about filling a raised bed. So today I've decided to share with you how I've gone about filling the only raised bed in the garden I'm currently working in the hopes that maybe it'll give you some ideas. Now, if you're strapped for cash, or if you maybe are a little bit limited on resources, there are various things that you can do in order to sort of approximate what I've done here. So get that creative thinking cap on as we go through this, and maybe you'll come up with a way to fill your own raised beds that doesn't require, an entire dump truck of soil. So what I did in this space before I did anything else was really took a look at the soil that existed previously in this bed. And you'll notice that this soil looked like rock. Like I literally had to take a pickaxe to it and break it up because it was just some of the most compacted and honestly most oxidized stuff that I've ever worked with. It's really a combination of a really fine silty sand and some pretty intense clay. And when I tried to wet it down so that I could scoop it out, the thing that happened was it turned into this really sticky mud that had no structure, and so basically you're scraping off these layers of gooey mud and finding this dry rock underneath. So like I said, I took a pickaxe to it, broke it all up, and then scooped it all out. Now this clay silt sand that I pulled out is kind of oxidized, so I decided I didn't really want to use this specifically to fill the bed, and I needed to come up with other solutions. So one of the solutions that I decided would be most impactful or effective for this size space was to do a modified Hugelkultur style bed. So if you've seen my previous builds before, like back in Texas, I had a Hugelkultur mound that we did in the middle of the yard to pretty decent success, where we buried part of it so that it wouldn't dry out as quickly. That's kind of the same thought process with this thing. So the first thing that I put down after I scooped out all of the oxidized rocks, essentially, was layers of sticks and logs and branches that were in various states of decomposition. Now, some of them were on the ground and they had fungi running through them already. Some of them were still attached to the trees but had been dead for a while and were sort of spongy. That's sort of the thing that you're looking for if you're going to put wood in the bottom of your bed. I don't use really fresh cut branches because two things can happen. One, they might root and start growing up through, which, like, if that's what you're looking for, more power to you. I've had grapevines do this before and that's how I know. And two, if it's really fresh, then it might tie up the nitrogen inside of your raised bed as it's breaking down. And so I don't really want that going on. I need things that are already in various stages of decomposition so that they have minimal impact on all of the rest of the biological cycles that are happening in here. So after I added these branches and sticks and logs at the very base layer, the next thing that I did was came through with various partially decomposed wood chips from all over the yard, as well as some of the soil that's under them. Now, I really focused on finding things that were densely populated with mycelium, where I could see those like white hyphae fungal strands running through the soil and the chips, and really focused on mixing that in because, again, that's going to help break down a lot of the larger pieces of wood that I have in the base of here without tying up too many other cycles in the process of doing so. From there, what I did was I took the green bin basically every week for about a month and a half. And so this has really been like a month and a half long project. It wasn't high priority for me, so I just kind of worked on it as I had the materials show up, basically. And so I took the green bin every week for about a month and a half and dumped out all of these high nitrogen yard trimmings. So we're talking leaf clippings and like bush trimmings, all sorts of green leaves and flowers and things that are like super, super green, to where if I forgot it in the green bin for part of the week and then dumped it in, it was already hot and decomposing. So really mixing that in with some of the wood chips and that soil to balance the carbon that I'm burying so that I'm not tying up crazy amounts of nitrogen, because it has access to high nitrogen food stock right from the get-go. So being very thoughtful with how you build all of the filler, essentially, to go under the layers of the nicer soil that you're going to eventually top it with. So from there, on top of the layers of wood chips and grass clippings, and I kind of did layer those back and forth every single week. I then added some compost from the bottom of the compost pile that I've been building now for right around 2 months now, really. I turned that pile over to a new pile because I saw that it wasn't decomposing exactly the way I wanted it to. And also I really needed some compost for this space. And then I took the bottom third of the compost pile. It was really densely populated, again, with more fungal strands. You could see like the really healthy white strands running through this compost pile, as well as there were lots of worms. There's definitely other microbes going on in there and other insects. And I added a layer of that compost into this space. Now, one of the things I did, and I'm going to back up for half a second, is while I was doing these layers and before I would go on to do other layers, really making sure that each layer is watered down so you don't have weird dry pockets going on that are going to pull all of the moisture once you get your plants in place. So making sure that everything is adequately and evenly moist and watered as you add the layers until you get your container filled. Once the compost was in place, I decided to add a couple inches of a bagged potting soil mix. Because this is a raised bed, I want to make sure that it's both holding moisture and adequately draining. And as all of these various cycles are happening below this kind of topsoil layer, making sure that these plants are adequately supported by something that is already, fully processed and not in the throes of various biological activity. And that was basically it. And so if you're not in a huge rush to fill a raised bed or to fill a series of raised beds, this is honestly like a really economical and thoughtful way to infuse your raised beds right from the get-go with lots of biodiversity, with lots of microbiology, and with lots of food for all of your plants as they go through their various cycles and processes throughout the season. Now, one of the things that you might notice in this space is that I have this weird looking contraption with a plastic water bottle down there. So this is a watering system I was sent to test out. So far I'm pretty stoked about it. And it's made by a company out of Egypt called Clayola. They just said, try it out and report back. And so if you've ever worked with Oyas, or wine bottles that are upside down, as I've shown before, like this is sort of an upgrade for that, I think. And I really like the design. I'll give you a close-up of these guys, but it seems to be working pretty effectively. I haven't been top watering in this space. So I'm pretty happy with that guy so far. And we'll see how it goes as it gets warmer. Just something to think about if you're looking for, passive irrigation solutions. This is so far one of the cooler things that I've gotten in that space. What else is going on here? I have weird little polyculture setups on the sides here. This is going to fill up way too fast, to be honest. So that end I have some miniature raspberries with some spearmint and some aloe, and playing, with various plants that can potentially help support each other. Against this post here at the end, I have a passion fruit that I started from seed way back in the winter, that we're going to see how far that can make it, because it's a super tropical variety of passion fruit, not one of the more cold tolerant species, so we'll see. Lots of, again, herbs and greens all down this middle, kind of trying to have a spot that is still somewhat close to the kitchen where you can come out and grab something if you need it, and also not as accessible to gophers and slugs and whatnot, so we don't lose quite as much as we might in the yard. And then on this end I have a little fig tree with some more spearmint and some aloe, and a dragon fruit that I've been growing from cutting that will hopefully grow up this post. So there's a lot going on in this space. So we'll see how it works out. It's always an experiment, right? But hopefully, as you go about filling raised beds, if you're trying to fill raised beds, even if you're trying to fill really big containers or grow bags, thinking beyond just filling and into soil building, I think will probably benefit you a lot more in the long run than anything else that you could do, to be honest, to get those filled. So really focus on balancing your greens to browns, your carbon and nitrogen, looking up, how much carbon and nitrogen is this feedstock, is this wood, versus how much carbon and nitrogen is this feedstock, which grass or weeds or whatever. You can basically fill this with any organic matter, as long as you get to a point where whatever depth of planting that you're dealing with, which is usually I'd say 4 to 6 inches of a solid layer of something that is ready to plant in. And then beyond that, go for it. Go for whatever you can fill it with. As long as there's balance, then you won't have everything tied up in your soil in terms of nutrients and whatnot. So If you have any questions about this, feel free to comment in the comments below. If you like what you see, hit that subscribe button, ding that bell, and follow me on Instagram at FlavorKit for all of this sort of stuff and more. I'm doing some shorter videos over there that don't really fit into YouTube quite as well. But yeah, come join us. We have a good time over there. And until next time, happy gardening.